In a world built on oil, trust, and old family names, one woman's heartbreak became the spark for a brand new empire. Whispers of Magnolia Oil, a story of betrayal and rebirth, where betrayal runs deep, but roots run deeper. The rain fell in lazy silver sheets over Magnolia County, the scent of wet earth curling up from the fields like a prayer. The big house on Willow Creek Road stood proud even in the storm, its white columns gleaming against the stormy violet sky. In its heart, Caroline Beaumont sat by the window cradling a worn photograph of her grandfather, the late Augustus Beaumont. Augustus had been a bear of a man with a heart just as big. His oil empire, Magnolia Oil, had been built with grit, sweat, and a deal or two made under oak trees heavy with Spanish moss. Caroline had been his shadow growing up, riding in his dusty truck, learning about wells and drilling rights, while other kids learned to braid friendship bracelets. He left her everything when he passed. Not because she was the eldest, not because she asked for it, but because he saw the fight in her. She needed that fight now. Across town, in a cramped hotel room that reeked of cheap cologne and betrayal, her husband, Marcus, whispered sweet lies into the ear of Savannah Rhodes, Caroline's childhood friend, practically her sister. Their affair was slick with deceit and drunken with ambition. Marcus had plans, nasty ones, to bleed Magnolia Oil dry and disappear with Savannah. Caroline didn't know all of it yet, but her lawyer and best friend, Daniel Holt, had been sending up smoke signals. Daniel had sandy hair, a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, and a jaw that looked like it had been carved by someone who knew exactly what heartbreak looked like. Marcus isn't what he pretends to be, Daniel said one night over bourbon and thunderstorms. The amber light of the fireplace caught the tired lines around his blue eyes. Open your eyes, Carol. She wanted to believe Daniel. God, she wanted to. But love made fools of queens, and she had built her whole damn castle with Marcus at her side. Then came the pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. She had clutched it to her chest in the powder blue bathroom of the big house, sobbing with joy. When she told Marcus, he had smiled wide and fake as a politician and hugged her with arms that felt hollow. He didn't say a word. She should have known then. Things were not as it seemed. Chapter 2. When it was street ill good. It was a sticky summer night in Baton Rouge when Caroline first laid eyes on Marcus Whitmore. The air was heavy with the smells of crawfish, cigarette smoke, and magnolia blossoms. She was 22, fresh out of college, with dirt still under her fingernails from a life lived half in the oil fields and half in the halls of privilege. He was charming in a reckless golden boy way, wearing a worn leather jacket and a crooked smile that could have sold sand to a drowning man. They met at a charity gala neither of them really wanted to attend. She was cornered by stuffy old men discussing oil futures. He was charming the room, a glass of bourbon in one hand and a lazy grin on his face. Their eyes met across the dance floor, and for a moment the noise faded away, replaced by the slow hum of something dangerous and sweet. Marcus cut through the crowd like he owned it, taking her hand without asking. "Dance with me, Beaumont," he drawled, his voice low and warm. She rolled her eyes but smiled anyway. "You don't even know my name." "I know enough," he said, pulling her into a slow 2-step, the scent of leather and sandalwood clinging to him. That night, They laughed until their cheeks hurt, shared greasy diner fries at 2 a.m., and kissed under a flickering neon sign buzzing with moths. Marcus made her feel seen, alive, reckless in the best kind of way. With him, life felt less like a burden and more like an adventure waiting to be written in bright, messy ink. He courted her like an old-school gentleman. Flowers, wild ones he borrowed from roadside ditches, late-night drives under stars, whispered promises of forever. The world smelled like honeysuckle and fresh rain when he was near. He said all the right things. He made her laugh. He made her dream bigger. When he proposed under the ancient oak tree on her family's land, the sunset bleeding gold and crimson across the fields, she said yes before he could finish asking. For a time, it was good. No, it was golden. Sunday mornings smelled like bacon and coffee as they danced barefoot in the kitchen. Lazy afternoons were spent tangled in each other, plotting futures where nothing and no one could touch them. She trusted him with everything: her heart, her name, her family's legacy. But the first signs were so small she ignored them. A lingering glance at Savannah, a missed dinner here, a forgot to call there. She chalked it up to stress, to business, to life. She loved him fiercely, blind to the tiny betrayals building like termites in the walls of their life together. Still, she held on to the good memories. The way he made her laugh when the world felt too heavy. The way he kissed her forehead when she was half asleep. The way he whispered, "You're my whole damn world, Caroline," under a star-stitched sky. Even as it all began to unravel, those memories clung to her like perfume from a past life, bittersweet and lingering, because once it had been real, or at least it had felt that real. But it was love built on charm and dreams. When she caught Savannah's hand a little too cozy on Marcus's knee, Caroline's instincts went from uneasy to full-body alarm bells. She didn't confront him right away. No, Caroline was a Beaumont. She knew better than to go charging blind into a war. Instead, she watched. She listened. She planned. First, she noticed things. Invoices that didn't add up. Bank accounts that had new names attached to them. Meetings Marcus said he had to fly out for, but receipts showed he'd never even left the city. The first crack came on another rainy night. Papers left out on his desk. Deeds, secret loans, meetings he swore never happened. And Savannah's handwriting in the margins of business plans that spelled out their betrayal in black and white. Caroline didn't scream. She didn't cry. She sharpened her claws. She called on her best friend, Daniel. Daniel, suspicious for months. She told him to do what lawyers do best, so he started digging, quietly, thoroughly, mercilessly. On muggy afternoon, while Caroline was sipping sweet tea on the porch, Daniel walked up the steps, a manila folder tucked under his arm and thunder in his eyes. "You need to see this, Caro," he said, voice low. Inside were contracts, fake land transfers, backdated documents. Marcus and Savannah had been working together to move ownership of Magnolia Oil piece by piece into dummy corporations. Corporations Savannah secretly controlled. If they pulled it off, Caroline would have lost everything her grandfather built. And if that wasn't a big enough slap to the face, tucked between the financial documents were hotel receipts. Dozens of them. Marcus, Savannah, registered together under fake names so stupid and obvious it was practically an insult to Caroline's intelligence. M. Beaumont and S. Rhodes at the Gardenia Inn, no less real creative idiots. Daniel slammed a hand on the table. They're not just cheating on you, Caro, they're trying to gut you. It was a double betrayal. Her husband and her best friend. One stealing her heart, the other stealing her family's empire. Carolyn sat back in her chair, the heat of betrayal searing through her veins. She thought of her grandfather's stories, how he clawed his way up from nothing, fought for every inch of land, every drop of oil. And she realized something. They underestimated her. She was a woman grieving a marriage. Not just that. She is a woman who had Beaumont fire and steel running through her blood. She is Augustus's granddaughter, and they made a big mistake. Chapter 3. Caroline didn't sleep that night. The house, usually so full of life, creaky floors, humming pipes, the comforting tick of the grandfather clock, was oppressively silent. She sat curled up on the worn leather armchair her grandfather once loved, staring out at the sheets of rain slashing across the magnolia trees. The smell of wet earth and dying roses filled the air. Every so often, thunder rumbled deep and slow, like a warning growl from something ancient. Inside her, tiny new life fluttered. A reminder that while Marcus was busy betraying her with someone she once called sister, Caroline was building a future, their future. Only now, it wouldn't be their anything. In the morning, Caroline did what women in her family had always done. She got up, she got dressed, and she got to work. The pink morning light barely touched the windows when she called Daniel. He answered on the first ring, his voice thick with sleep and something sharper, rage barely contained. "I need you. I am ready," Caroline said simply. "Say less. I'm coming." By noon, Daniel was sitting across from her at the heavy oak dining table, a legal pad in front of him and a look on his face that could curdle milk. "We're gonna cut him off at the knees, Caro. Quiet, clean, no mercy," he said, his hand tapping a slow beat against the table. Caroline nodded. Her heart was shredded, but her mind had never been clearer. And Marcus? He had no idea what was coming. He thought he could smile his way out of anything. Thought her loyalty, her love, her faith were weaknesses. But he forgot where Caroline came from. She was a Beaumont, born of oil and grit and magnolia roots so deep they could crack stone. And now she had a secret weapon. A baby growing inside her. And Daniel, her fiercest ally. The next few weeks became a dance of deception, but this time, Caroline was leading. She smiled at Marcus. She kissed his cheek. She told him she needed time to think. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly shifted assets, locked down contracts, and started tightening the noose Marcus didn't even know was around his neck. Savannah was suddenly, suspiciously, scarce, probably sensing the shifting winds, but too arrogant to imagine they could touch her. One rainy Saturday evening, the exact kind of night it had all fallen apart, Caroline stood looking at the mirror. Her belly was just starting to show. "You'll never have to question your worth," she whispered to her baby. "Not like I did." And in the reflection, she didn't see a heartbroken woman anymore. She saw a warrior, and war was coming. With Daniel's help, She orchestrated a takeover of her own company so elegant it would have made Augustus beam from heaven. They staged a family unity event. All smiles, all hugs, and Caroline used it to expose Marcus's fraud in front of every investor, every sibling, every greasy board member who thought she was just a pretty figurehead. Chapter 4. The Hammer Falls. The setting was almost poetic. The annual Magnolia Oil Founders Gala. A glittering affair held at the sprawling Beaumont estate under a canopy of fairy lights, with white roses climbing the trellises and the scent of gardenias thick in the humid air. Everyone who mattered in town was there. Bankers, landowners, politicians, all sipping sweet tea and bourbon, their laughter floating into the warm night. Caroline stood at the top of the grand staircase, a vision in deep emerald silk, her hair pinned back with her grandmother's pearl combs. She looked every bit the Beaumont heir her grandfather had always known she would be. Not a hint of the storm brewing underneath. Marcus spotted her from across the room and started toward her, that same snake oil grin plastered across his handsome face. Savannah wasn't far behind, wearing a slinky silver dress that screamed desperation and bad decisions. Caroline, let them come. Let them get close. Let Marcus reach for her hand. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that made men uneasy, and spoke into the microphone at the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," her voice rang out, sweet as molasses but sharp as a blade, "I want to thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate not just Magnolia Oil's future, but also its rebirth." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus shifted uneasily. Savannah's smile faltered. Caroline continued, her voice a velvet hammer. "As of this evening, I am pleased to announce that I have acquired full controlling interest in Magnolia Oil." Gasps. Whispers. Marcus's face drained of color so fast it was almost comical. "Effective immediately," Caroline went on. "Marcus Beaumont has been relieved of all duties and authority related to the company. His attempt to quietly transfer ownership through shell companies, with the assistance of Miss Savannah Rhodes, was unsuccessful. All pertinent evidence has been turned over to my legal team." She glanced at Daniel, standing by the side of the stage in a crisp black suit, arms crossed, smirking like the devil at Sunday service. "And," Caroline said, her voice honeyed death, "criminal charges are pending." Savannah made a noise like a wounded animal. Marcus lunged forward, but Daniel and two uniformed officers were already moving. Marcus was led away in stunned silence. Savannah tried to run, but her heels caught in the flagstone. She went sprawling, silver dress and dignity crumpled at Caroline's feet. Caroline didn't flinch, didn't blink. She simply looked down at the woman who had once been like a sister. "Savannah, oh." She tried to beg, tears, apologies, the whole soap opera. Caroline looked her dead in the eye, feeling the baby kick inside her, a tiny thrum of future and faith, and simply said, "You were family. You could have had it all. Now I never want to see you again." And just like that, Caroline Beaumont reclaimed her life, her family's legacy, and her future. As the music swelled and the stars glittered overhead, Caroline rested a hand on her belly. A new beginning was coming, and no one, not Marcus, not Savannah, not 1,000 betrayals would take it from her again. Chapter 5. Caroline's next move. The ink on Marcus's downfall was barely dry when Caroline sat at her grandmother's old kitchen table, staring at a blank notebook, a chipped coffee cup in hand. Outside, the Louisiana summer buzzed and bloomed. The heavy smell of honeysuckle wrapping around the porch like an old, familiar hug. Somewhere across the field, a screen door slammed and a dog barked. The world spinning on like it hadn't just cracked wide open and rearranged itself. Magnolia Oil was safe, but her heart, her future, they needed more than just survival. They needed something new. With the house reclaimed, the business safe, and her family drawing tighter around her, finally seeing her for the leader she had become, Caroline began dreaming of new ventures. Something that smelled less like crude oil and more like her grandmother's kitchen: butter, vanilla, smoked pork, and peaches. Caroline tapped her pen against the page. A restaurant. A place with wide oak floors, creamy white walls, and dishes rich with love and memory. A place that honored her family's roots and her own new beginning. The Beaumont table. Simple, Southern food. Recipes passed down through whispered kitchen secrets and battered old cookbooks. She jotted down the first words, smiling despite herself. Buttermilk fried chicken, 3 cheese mac, jasmine peach cobbler, cathead biscuits the size of your fist. The colors in her mind were rich and warm, terracotta and deep sage, cream linens and dark wood. The walls would smell like fresh bread, hickory smoke, and vanilla. The plates would come out heavy and hot, the kind of food that sat in your soul, not just your stomach. She wanted families gathering around long tables. She wanted laughter spilling out the door and fireflies dancing in the dusky air. Something her child could be proud of one day. Daniel found her there later that afternoon, the notebook already filled with scribbles, menu ideas, and little doodles of tables and chairs. "You thinking about getting into the restaurant business?" he asked, smirking around the edge of his coffee mug. Caroline looked up, fire in her eyes and butter-warm hope in her chest. "I'm not just thinking about it, Daniel. I'm doing it." He laughed, low and proud. "Well, hell. Remind me to get my order in early. I don't want to be the idiot standing outside in the heat when you've got a 2-hour wait." She grinned, thinking with love in her heart. Daniel has always been there. "Oh, you'll always have a table, right next to the kitchen, where I can keep an eye on my child's godfather." He smiled and we watched the sun go down and basked in the gentle summer breeze. And a new chapter began. Chapter 6. Building More Than Walls. The building was a wreck. The old Dewdrop Inn had been abandoned for almost a decade, sitting squat and forgotten at the edge of town like a stubborn old mule. The paint peeled in long, sad strips. Windows were cracked. The wooden porch sagged so hard it looked like it was sighing. But Caroline stood there in the muggy morning air, one hand resting on the curve of her belly, and she saw potential. She saw the Beaumont table rising from these bones. Strong, welcoming, unstoppable. Daniel stood beside her, arms crossed, a crowbar slung over one shoulder. "You sure about this, Caro? You could just, I don't know, buy a brand new spot, one that doesn't have black mold giving you the side eye." She laughed, a real belly-deep laugh. "Nope, this is the one. It's got heart." just needs a little TLC, like some people I know." He muttered something about crazy, stubborn women and followed her inside. The weeks that followed were a sweaty, chaotic blur of paint, sawdust, and cussing so creative it would have made her granddaddy blush. Caroline worked every day she could, wearing paint-splattered overalls and no patience for excuses. The walls were painted a soft sage green. The floors were scrubbed until they gleamed golden and warm. The air started to smell like hope, fresh lemon oil and new beginnings. But by month 8 of her pregnancy, even Caroline had to admit defeat. Her ankles were the size of grapefruits. Her back felt like it had been personally insulted by gravity. And that baby boy in her belly, a kicker, just like his mama, wasn't having any of it. One morning, after getting stuck halfway up a stepladder trying to hang a light fixture, she finally surrendered. She handed Daniel the keys, pointed a very firm finger at him, and said, "You're in charge now, Marshal Dillon. Don't screw it up." He saluted with a wicked grin. "Yes, ma'am. I'll try not to burn the place down." Opening day came 3 weeks later, and it was everything Caroline had dreamed of. The Beaumont table buzzed with life. Families filled the long wooden tables. The air smelled like fried chicken and warm biscuits. Laughter tumbled out the doors like music. Caroline sat on the wide front porch, rocking gently in a chair Daniel had built himself. Her parents were there, her mama crying openly into a handkerchief, her daddy pretending he wasn't wiping his eyes too. Daniel was already plotting Sunday brunch menus and arguing with my siblings Raina and Ken over the best cornbread recipe. And Caroline? She sat there, one hand cradling her round belly, feeling her son kicking inside her. Yep, IT's a boy. A fierce, perfect little reminder that the future was coming loud, messy, and full of promise. The hurt was still there. It would always be part of her story. But it didn't define her. Not anymore. She was building something stronger. Something rooted in love, not betrayal.